We have plenty to talk about this week. I wonder what your judgment was. I assume you've already shared it with your listeners about what we saw the other day from President Biden. To me, it just seems like too little too late.
It is way too little. I was on Special Report last night, and I said he swung and he missed, and he mixed up Islamophobia and hate speech. He buried the lead, which is anti-Semitism, and he gets another shot on Tuesday, but I'm afraid the man's infirm. Ben, I want to stipulate a few facts for you that I understand to be true. There are 1.4 million people who were in Rafa up to about 2 weeks ago. It has gone down by about 300,000 who have left Rafa, so we have 1,000,001 people in Rafa. We also have between 10 and 20,000 Hamas terrorists. The low end is 10. The high end is 20 because the battalions that were destroyed, they retreated to Rafa. All of their leadership and 100 hostages in the tunnels and the system of Rafa. It's a very small place. Yesterday, Secretary Blinken said, and the Times of Israel reported, quote, there are better ways of dealing with the real ongoing challenge of Hamas that do not involve or require a major military operation in Rafah, close quote. Ben, what could those possibly be, those better ways?
Oh, there's always a better way, Hugh. I mean, I'm sorry. Blinken he never fails to disappoint, doesn't he? It's one of these things where it's just like the guy can be relied upon to be consistent.
Yeah, you think you're on the floor and he digs a hole so he can fall off of the floor.
It is ridiculous. Look, I don't think that there is any other approach that can be used at this point. But look, what Blinken is doing, and this is what has consistently been true of this administration, is that they have navigated foreign policy through the lens of domestic policy. They've navigated foreign policy not through the priorities of the American people or America's allies or prioritizing, security around the world. They have instead navigated it based on the domestic political signals that they've been getting from within their party. And that's been true ever since Joe Biden got elected. And really what it is a complete, subjugation of any kind of priority that puts America's interests first or the interests of our allies first ahead of the interests of factions within his own electorate who are the loudest and who, have, the biggest megaphone, but are still not representative in any way of the American people or even the Democratic Party itself. I mean, and yet that's what they've continued to do ever since day one, and it's what they're doing in this situation once again. And it's why.
Ben, I don't know if you listened to Dan Senor Call Me Back podcast, but he's fabulous, and he had Habib Rediger on yesterday. And Dan
you are his number one fan, and you got to add it to my podcast rotation just so that I can talk to you about it.
that yesterday, Senor had this. He just came back from Israel. He had this breakthrough moment of clarity, which is, it seems to me that all of the Biden administration policies of the last 2 months is devoted to stopping Israel from going into Rafah. That's it. Because if it goes into Rafah, it'll be ugly and it will hurt his reelect, and Chicago convention has come out. It's the only thing that makes sense, Ben. Otherwise, it's completely incoherent.
No, I completely agree with that analysis. And I think that this is one of these situations where, the echoes of 68 are very present in the minds of the White House at this moment. And they don't really have a particular path out of it. You see this divide playing out, I think, in this way over the past week in a way that actually broke through to the common American conversation, meaning for the American voter, the American independent voter, and by that I mean true independent, swing voters who voted for Trump and who voted for Biden do very much exist. And this is the thing that think this administration everyone in our political analysis pretends like those people don't exist. There are a ton of them, okay? And they actually decide elections. These people are swinging back toward Trump in a hard way, and they're doing so because they see the chaos in the world and on campus, and they hate it. And the number one thing that Joe Biden could be doing right now is standing up strong for law, for order, against chaos, against these campus administrators who are allowing this to happen, against these campus organizers that are allowing this to happen. And look, I'm sure you've probably seen this image, but I wrote yesterday the image of the janitor at Columbia with the Yankees hat on, the Latino janitor fighting with an entitled, white plaid-clad student or activist who is trying to take over Hamilton Hall. That is the Democratic Party today. That's their coalition right there. And the guy in the Yankees hat, he's not voting for Joe Biden in the fall.
No. Let me play. I'll refer to the other podcast I listen to religiously, which is Commentary. 2 days ago, Seth Mandel said these Columbia people and all these, they're cosplaying Gazans the way my kids cosplay Harry Potter. They're pretending to be, and they're just appropriating. I thought that was brilliant. And then John Podhoretz, cannot believe how bad the political operation is at the White House. But if you look at that speech yesterday, it was written by progressives to avoid upsetting pro-Palestinian students, and it didn't work. And it also didn't address anti-Semitism. It is truly, I think John is right. It's the most incompetent political campaign I've ever seen.
Well, look, here's the thing. It's a non-campaign. It's a Rose Garden non-campaign. And so because of that, you have serious limitations on what you're actually going to do. Basically, when he leaves, he goes and just does fundraisers. But he hops back home. I felt like the speech yesterday sounded a note that would have been pretty good if he gave it 2 weeks ago. It just sort of, if he gave it before there was actual violence breaking out and occurring with regularity. But it seems so out of touch because it seemed out of time. It seemed like as if you don't see what's going on here, and you also have no real solution here. I mean, look, the combination of sort of Karine Jean-Pierre and John Meacham and the other people who are influencing the messaging of this admin is basically one of earnest pomposity, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. It does not track at all with what people are seeing, and so because of that, I think that you end up with this situation where, frankly, he does not seem like a president who is in touch with reality, and that's something
I agree with that.
Obviously.
But a quick question, Ben, because we're going to
the age and everything else too.
The quick question is: could the conviction of Donald Trump, which I think is inevitable, given Justice Merchan's rulings, which are partisan and unforgivable, and Alvin Bragg's abuse of due process, could his conviction in New York make the race tighten? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think one of the things that's going to happen, I think when that conviction happens, I think my prediction would be he goes down 2 or 3 points in terms of the polls, and then he pops right back up. Because I think what's going to happen is people are going to initially react to it saying, oh, well, he got convicted of something. Well, this is bad. And then they're going to say, well, wait a minute, he got convicted in the porn star case? Like, that doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't mean anything to my bottom line. It doesn't mean anything to my grocery bill. It doesn't mean anything to the direction of the country. And I think that that's what's essentially going to happen here. The going after him in the way that they have, carpet bombing him with these cases, ultimately backfires, I think, if you end up just catching him on what is essentially the equivalent of, a traffic violation.
So what do you think of my way out for the Democrats, which is they get to Chicago and President Biden announced, I just decided I can't do this job. I'm going to throw it open to the convention. It's the only way to avoid Kamala Harris, right? So you've got to do it on the eve of the convention and throw it to the delegates. What do you think?
I think that's probably their only path to victory. I think that Joe Biden is so much worse of a candidate than people realize at this point. And by the way, I would just point out some of the best analysts who are out there right now who have Democrat audiences, and I would include, obviously Nate Cohn at the New York Times, Nate Silver, the people who are, in the business of looking at data. They have been sounding this note for basically a month now that Biden is much weaker than we think, as meaning we as a left of center audience sort of think as a candidate. And I think that unfortunately that's where smart Democrats are. But I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think he's spent his whole career getting to this point. He's going to hold on to it, white knuckling it to the end.